Okay, here are the 1.1b notes. This is all about solving for a variable in an equation. So what does it mean to solve for a variable? If it says solve for a variable, it means they want you to get one variable by itself. And the variable is obviously just another word for the letter. So they might ask you to solve for y or solve for k. Maybe they solve for m. So it's really important that you read each direction to make sure you know what you're solving for. Okay, how do I solve for y? So in each of these, you have the y right here, and your goal is to get the y by itself on one side. So I'm going to move everything else to the other side. I'm going to start by subtracting 3x. Bring down negative 7y. And then the 8 and the negative 3x, make sure you do not combine those together. I'm going to leave it as two separate things. You can either put the negative 3x first, or you can put the 8 first. It doesn't matter, as long as the signs, the minus and the positive, follow those numbers. Then you divide by negative 7. And here you can either divide the entire thing by negative 7, or you can do it individually if you want. Since this does not ask me to graph, I'm going to go ahead and just leave it in this format. Negative 3x plus 8 all over negative 7, and that's going to be my final answer. If you separated it out, you could write it as y equals negative 3x over negative 7 plus 8 over negative 7. And then you could make those two negatives a positive. That would also be a correct answer. Either one is perfectly fine. Example 2. Still asking me to solve for y. Here is y. So this time the y is the first thing we see. So I'm going to start by moving the 18. Go ahead and subtract 18 from both sides. And then divide by 9 and see if you can get an answer for y equals. And again, you can divide by 9, either the entire problem, and leave your answer like that. That is a beautiful answer. Or another way you might see this answer written is if you broke up the 9 into each of these individual pieces. And this would be helpful on this problem because you can reduce it. 3/9 reduces to 1/3. And then 18 divided by 9 gives you 3. So you might also see an answer like that. But again, both of these are the same. All right, example number 3. Here's your y. I'm going to give you guys just a moment. See if you can solve for y here. First step, subtract 5x. Cancel. 2y equals, and again, you could write these two in either order. You could either write the 12 first or the negative 5 first. Go ahead and write the 12 first this time. And then divide by 2. So you notice that a lot of the steps are pretty similar. You normally add or subtract first and then go ahead and divide out. And I'll leave this one in one big format like that. Okay. So that's solving for y. So just make sure you get the y by itself. You know your answer is done when you have y equals. Y equals is the most common thing that we solve for. We use it a lot when we are graphing. However, there's a lot of other things we can solve for as well. We can solve for any other variable. So this next section says, how do I solve for the indicated variable? So on each one, they're going to tell you which letter, which variable they want you to solve for. Here, they want us to solve for r, which means we need to get the r by itself. I need to get rid of t. Because the r and the t are right next to each other, it means they're being multiplied. So I'm going to go ahead and do the opposite of that. Divide by t. Here, the t's will cancel. D divided by t just leaves it like that. There's nothing more we can do with that. And that equals r. That is my final answer. R is by itself on one side of the equal sign and everything else is on the other. So you have successfully solved for R. Problem number 5. Solve for H. Here's our H right here. And we want to get rid of the pi and the R squared. So all of these on the right-hand side, the pi times R squared times H, those are all being multiplied. So to get rid of it, we can divide. And since it's one big multiplication problem, I can get rid of it by doing one big division problem. Divide out the pi r squared. Whatever you do to one side, make sure you do to the other. And then you'll notice that your pi's cancel and your r squares cancel, and you're left with h. Then over here, I don't even have any numbers over here, just a bunch of letters in the pi. So I'm going to write it as v over pi r squared. So you think about this as rearranging the numbers and the letters instead of really solving a math problem here. This is helpful if you need to work with a formula and you have some of these letters, but you're missing the other side. So you would need to rearrange those formulas. All right, down here at the bottom, number 6 and 7. 6 asks us to solve for A. And I notice on this one that I have a plus sign as well. So I want to get the A by itself on this side of the equal sign. You can even, if you wanted to, draw a line down the center here. And that way you know whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. I'm going to first start by subtracting 3b. Cancel. 3a is left on this side. I have my equal sign in the middle. And then over here on the left, I have a negative 3b and a c. However, I'm subtracting. I am not multiplying, so you don't want to write those all together. You actually want to write it as c minus 3b. You could also put the negative 3b in front and write it like that. That would be the same. But you do not want to write it like this. All right, our last step is to divide by 3. And again, go ahead and take the whole thing and divide it by 3. Now, when you get to this part over here, make sure that you don't cancel out this 3 next to this other b right here. I can cancel these on this side because it's just a 3 being multiplied by the a. But over here, this 3 right here is also connected to the c. So I want to make sure that I don't cancel out this 3 with this 3, because then that will leave out the c. So I'm just going to leave it as c minus 3b over 3 equals a. If you wanted to, you could simplify this out by writing it as c over 3 minus 3b over 3 equals a. And then you could simplify, cancel out those 3's. But notice how this 3 over here is still with the c. That's really important. So that would be another correct answer for what we have right here. These two would be the same. All right, example number 7. Example number 7 looks like it has some multiplication as well as some division. Multiply both sides by 3 in order to cancel those 3's right there. Then I have 3v equals, that's a lowercase l. I'm going to write mine like that. R squared and h. We are trying to solve for h right there. If you know what your last step is, go ahead and do that to get h by itself. Your last step is to divide by LR squared. divide by LR squared on both sides. The L's cancel, the R squares cancel, and I'm just left with H. On this side, I have 3V over LR squared. And there's my final answer. H is solved for because H is by itself on one side of the equal sign. All right, let's look at this very last problem here, example 8. Deontay did the problem incorrectly. So notice already they're telling us from the beginning this is wrong. Explain his mistake, then solve it correctly in the space provided. So we have two parts here. Solve it correctly as well as explaining the mistake. So take a look at this. It says solve for x, and Deontay subtracted the yz. See if you can take a look at this problem and see what he did incorrectly. All right. So Deontay was trying to get this x by itself right there. But this y and the z are actually being multiplied. So if he wanted to get rid of that, he shouldn't subtract. He should actually divide. So his mistake was he subtracted the yz when he should have divided. Now we can go ahead and solve that correctly. I'm going to rewrite the problem and try to solve for x. I need to get x by itself, and we already know we need to divide. The y's cancel. The z's cancel. My x is by itself on this side. And whatever's else on the other side, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it. So Deontay should have got an answer of w over yz instead of w minus yz. Okay, so if you have any questions after watching this video, feel free to go ahead and just write them on the bottom, or maybe you star the ones you need help with, or write a big old question mark next to it. So that way when I see you in class, we can go through it together. You can also shoot me an email if you want, and I'll try to walk you through any questions that you have. Nice job today.